Good morning. Let's begin as always by taking a few breaths together. So if you will, take a deep breath in and let it go. Take another deep breath in and let go. One more collective deep breath in and let go. And so good morning. I feel like I come this morning a little disturbed and with a heavy heart. If you look at the world at all, it's clear that something is not right. I have spent much of the week paying attention to the current events and to what's been happening in the news. And the deaths of Dante Wright and Adam Toledo have really, really disturbed me. And it's not just these two, it's that this thing continues to happen. And that the cognitive dissonance in our society, in our government, and in our world around the situation that we are living in is just becoming so incomprehensible to some degree. And, we come back to this place week by week, seeking to move towards this idea that we are here to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. And some days I feel like I would settle for simply awakening us from our descent into madness. I look out in the world and I keep asking this question of myself. How is it that yet again, an unarmed person of color with their hands in the air, this time a 13-year-old boy, is shot dead? And yet, only a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I watched a white man who walked into a building and killed multiple people be handcuffed and walked away and put safely into a cop car. How is it that we can live with such cognitive dissonance in our world? How is it that we can live with such horror and not find the disturbance within ourselves that something has to give? I came across a quote this week in my practice and study, and I don't know who it's attributed to, but it says that every human is an image of God, a sacred being who represents the Creator and is worthy of respect. I'm going to read that again. Every human is an image of God, a sacred being who represents the Creator and is worthy of respect. When I say these things like God is all there is and there's only one of us here, these basic principles that we refer to week after week, this is what I mean. When I say that there's only one of us here, that God is all there is, I mean that every single human life is the image and likeness of God. That every one of us is sacred and that we are representatives of life, of the Creator, of the Beloved. And that every one of us is worthy of that respect. When we say namaste, when we put our hands together and bow to each other, that's what we're here acknowledging, saying that I recognize that something precious and beautiful, that is life, that is God, lives within me, and I'm seeking to see it in you. This is the thing that we must bring forward into our world. We can no longer live in a society that continues to demonstrate whose lives are valuable and whose lives are worthy of respect. We cannot continue in this manner. And we have to begin to really ask some deep questions, not only of ourselves, but of our world. because it's the questions we ask and the answers that we're willing to seek that is going to bring forward what comes next. And I do believe indeed that God is all that there is, that all of life is a manifestation of what is moving in our collective consciousness and from the consciousness of our history. But when these things rise up in our world, we have to be willing to ask, what is this? If I believe that God is all there is, that if God is for us, then what could possibly be against us? If everything is for our good, if everything is for our evolution, I need to look into these lives lost and say, what is this for? And the response of the universe, of this reflective process of creation to that question, what is this for? Why is this? The universe whispers back to me and back to each one of us, you tell me. You choose. You choose what this means. You choose what this activates in your heart. You choose what step, what change, what thought you are going to move forward with based on what you are seeing here. Because we are living in a time where lives are being sacrificed over and over and over again. And these lives cannot be lost in vain. That something must come from this. What is this for? All of this is here. And we could look at 1,000 things happening in our world right now. It's not just police violence, not just systemic oppression and racism. It's not just climate change. It's not just COVID-19. There are 1,000 things we could point to and say, what is happening here? And it feels to me in some way like we are moving through a collective psychosis, that reality sometimes feels like it's broken, and that different factions of humanity, different groups of mind are living in whole different worlds, whole different realities, whole different senses of what is even true on any given day. And somehow our attention, our consciousness as a collective, as a society, has been shattered and fractured into these individualized realities that we then participate in the perpetuation of. And in a sense, we're living through a time of a war of ideologies, that there is a battle in consciousness happening around us every day. And what we do and how we engage it and how we respond to this thing, this is going to be the measure of who we are. You know, our theme for this month is stepping into the unknown. And I look at the world and I think, you know, my friends, that is every day we wake up. That is every time we walk out our door. That we don't know what the future holds. And when we look out in the world, it's like, what is happening? Where could all of this be going? That we are moving into a great unknown future, a great time of uncertainty. That in many realms, in many ways, the future is teetering through the balance of potential possibilities. And our choices and our collective action and inaction is moving us in a direction. And I heard a quote a long while back, again, I don't know who I'm attributing it to, but it says, we will arrive where we are going if we do not change our destination, or if we do not change our direction. We will arrive where we are going if we do not change our direction. That wherever this unknown path is unfolding us, wherever we are being moved towards as a collective, we will arrive there. We will arrive at what is coming if we do not shift what is happening. And yet, we have that power. Each one of us has the power to say, it stops with me. Whatever it is, that the ignorance stops with me, that the oppression stops with me, that I am a place where this thing can no longer continue. You know, my mother came from a long line of abuse within a family. And she was a victim of much of that abuse in her life growing up. And I had a conversation with my mom after her mother passed away. And there was this great realization that I had in understanding some things that I couldn't quite comprehend when I was younger, that I got to really see as an adult. That my mother became a place. She became one who took a stand against a generational dis-ease in her family of passed down trauma and abuse. And she said, it stops with me. I will not pass this culture on to my children. I will not perpetuate this thing that I was born into that was given to me. And she became the place in our family line where that abuse was broken, where it was stopped. And she raised beautiful, powerful people who are doing wonderful things in the world. But each one of us has to take that stand, that no matter what we've been given, no matter what has come before us, no matter what circumstances we have had to endure, that each one of us needs to, in this moment in history, in this moment in time, in this moment in our world, choose to be the place where it stops. Because we will arrive where we are going if we do not change our direction. And my friends, our collective direction needs a massive recalculation. And I believe, and I speak this regularly, that whatever I see out there, if I see it in the world, if it hits me in a way that I am disturbed, that it angers me or upsets me or brings me into some sort of passion or awakening, if I can see it, it exists in me. It has something to do with me. That if it's showing up in my world, that life is trying to show me something. And so when those things show up in our world, we have to ask, what is this for? And the universe asks us back, you tell me. You choose. You decide. What does this mean? What am I going to do with this? How am I going to be the place where this disturbance or this disruption that I'm seeing in the world is not allowed to exist in my presence, is not allowed to exist anymore? Because if I ever want to live into a realization of an idea, a dream of a world that works for everyone, then it's time to really, really, with a microscope, with a magnifying glass, with every tool we have, start searching and looking for all the things that need to be lifted up, for all the people who need to be supported. If we want to see a world that works for all, it's going to take a lot of work. Because, my friends, the world that we are seeing continues to seem like it is unraveling. And I've been contemplating this week sort of interesting parallel to a Bible story. Again, I grew up in a Christian church, and so I have lots of Bible stories in my mind that run around, and I contemplate these as metaphors. And there's a story in the Old Testament, I believe it's in Genesis, about the Tower of Babel. And a real short version of that story or that myth is that humanity all had one language at one time, and they all came together and decided to build a tower to heaven, that they could build something big enough and powerful enough that they could actually reach heaven. And my version of the story is, well, then God got scared and said, well, if they can come together and they can do this thing, then they can do anything. And so God, in the story, shatters the language so that brothers can no longer understand each other, and that parents and children can no longer understand each other. And then they all have to go their separate ways, and they can only hear the people who can speak the language that they now have. And there was a fracturing of reality, and neighbors and family members could no longer understand each other. Now, let's just take that story as a metaphor, as a pattern, as a blueprint to then lay on top of our own experience. We, humanity, are coming together in a moment in history where our scientific and medical capacities are leading us to almost infinite possibility. That we are sending rovers to other planets, contemplating leaving this, some of us contemplating leaving this place and going and inhabiting other worlds. that our medicine has allowed us to heal most diseases and extend our lives dramatically compared to generations before us. That in a sense, we are like that generation in the story who saw that they could build a tower and reach the heavens. That we as a human society are at a point where there is infinite potential in front of us. That if humanity truly came together and actually brought all of our skills, all of our talent, all of our excellence, all of our genius, valued everyone, and lifted them up to work together to co-create the world, that we could achieve that world that works for everyone. That we are on the precipice of reaching heaven as a society. And yet there is this thing happening in our world where, due to our social media and our politics and all of the different things that are bubbling up, we have been shattered. And suddenly parents and children don't understand each other because their philosophical views are so different. That the right and the left, the red and the blue, cannot hear each other. They're speaking different languages. They're standing in whole different realities. There's a story a metaphor that comes from the Kabbalah teaching of Judaism that says, in the very beginning of time, before the creation of the world, all of the light and energy of creation was held in these sacred vessels. And something happened, and one of those vessels broke, and it shattered into 1,000 pieces, and all the energy scattered everywhere, and all of those thousands of pieces became what we call existence. And that the purpose of spirituality, that the purpose of cultivating a relationship with the divine, or finding our authentic voice, or waking to our gifts and talents of dreaming of a world that works for everyone, the purpose of all of that is to go looking for all those broken pieces of the vessel and start seeing how to put them back together so that eventually the vessel can hold the light again. And I share these stories because I think that they're relevant. It feels like these myths, these metaphors, these ideas really express to me what we're living through. That we are living in this time of great potential, of great possibility. That if we as a human family actually stood for the awakening of the presence of God in each person and looking for it, the respect and honor of each person's value, if we actually came together around our possibility, around a vision, I believe that every solution to every problem facing humanity is right in front of us. That all of the pieces of the puzzle, if you will, are here. All of the pieces of that broken vessel to hold the light, they're all here. That everything that we need to do to shift our relationship to climate change, we know what to do. That everything that needs to be addressed in relation to systemic oppression and racism and all of the economic disparity that's happening in the world, all of the solutions are here. But it's a matter of taking this idea and saying, do these fit together? Do these fit together? Do these fit together? How can I take this and this and this and see that they are all part of a greater whole? And that if we can bring all of these conversations, all of these movements, all of these fractured ideas, if we can find a way to start to bring them together, that we could actually begin to build a vessel, a consciousness that could actually hold our possibility. What would it look like for each one of us to take what is happening in the world and let it in and allow ourselves to be disturbed, to allow ourselves to be moved? What if the deep call right now for those of us who claim to be spiritual people seeking to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence, using wonderful spiritual tools for the purpose of building a world that works for everyone? What if the deep call for us to ever achieve that is to start getting comfortable being uncomfortable, is to start practicing letting the world in, not ignoring it, not just trying to positivity it away, but actually letting it in, feeling the pain, feeling the disturbance, feeling the deep need for things to shift. You know, I had a deep realization last year after I participated in a webinar by someone named Dr. Buki Kalaule. And it was about how to be a better white ally in this time of racial injustice. And really the conversation was about stop thinking of yourself. It was to me, you know, to you, white people, stop thinking of yourself as an ally to us, the oppressed, in this issue. Find the place in your heart where this is your issue, where this is about the world that you want to live in, where this is about a deep need for you, the change that you want to see in the world for yourself, for your children. Find your why and bring the issue into your heart and realize that it is yours. And then we can stand together and actually make a difference. We have to look at the pieces that we see outside of ourselves and connect them to our soul, to our sense of possibility, to our sense of ownership, and begin to claim what is ours to do, what is ours to hold. Because, my friends, I do believe that our spiritual movement, that our truth, that our deep willingness to choose what we see, to look out into the world and ask, what is this for? That even if it all looks disturbed, if it all looks broken, if it all looks wrong, and we just want to say, WTF, what is this for? What is this for? And the universe reflects back to us, you tell me, you choose, you decide what to do with this. But let us open our hearts and minds and take a willingness to hold what is happening in the world and claim our piece of it. That this shattered vessel, that this broken reality is just waiting for us to start to put it back together, to create the appropriate container that can actually hold the possible, so that we can move into something new, so that we can shift this story. Because something has got to give. But we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I believe that this is a time, that this is a moment that we have to make a deep commitment. Each one of us have to make a deep commitment to do the work, to take the steps, to participate in whatever action is necessary, to make whatever changes are necessary. Because it's enough. We have to look out in the world and say, enough. This needs to stop. And let me be the place. Let me be the place where it stops and where something new can emerge. And so, my friends, I just want to invite you to take this in, to take a deep breath. If it's comfortable, close your eyes. And together, let us just breathe into the awareness that each one of us is being breathed by something greater than ourselves. That there is an infinite beingness, an infinite life force, a deep truth that is the one, the beingness, the energy that is living and breathing throughout the entirety of the universe. Let us remember for ourselves and for all people that every human is an image of God, a sacred being who represents the Creator and is worthy of respect. Let us remember that truth about ourselves and let us look for it in the world. Let us remember that truth about the Adam Toledos and the Dante Wrights and the George Floyds and the 1,000 other names that need to be remembered. Let us remember that every life is God, is worthy of respect, represents the Creator itself. And that if we ever want to live in a world where that is actually the value that we share, then we must be the ones who bring it to every situation, to every possibility. And so today it is with a heart cracked open that I claim for myself that something's got to give, and that I am willing to do the work to be part of that movement in consciousness and in the physical world, because lives are at stake. And it is time for a new story. And so let us be in this moment in celebration that possibility is calling us, and that something is rising up in our world, and it is begging for our attention. But let us know that we can be grateful because all the solutions are here. We just have to turn our attention to them. And so let us remember today that there is indeed a power for good in this universe that is so much greater than we are. And it is rising up in the world, and it is calling for us to take action, to move through us, for each one of us to be used by this power for good, to be an instrument of change, and to be the greatest force of love the world has ever seen. And so, my friends, let us just breathe again and let go and let God. And so it is.